wait, red means wait, right?
No, red means you're on.
Oh, all right.
That's gonna be
Defies the laws of traffic.
I know, it is confusing.
All right, it is the Goffstown Budget Committee. It is March 31st, 2026. We are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will do a roll call. You want to start?
Rich Gerald.
Laura Stevens.
Allison DeCesare, Select Board Rep.
Samantha Kearns.
Elizabeth DeBrule.
Jack Carbonell, School Board Rep.
Joe Spurl.
Brian Mazer.
Peter Grigorakakis.
Joe Alexander.
Israel Carey.
We have a number of absences tonight, which I can't remember all of them. Well, James Piercy and Olivia Welch-Erdahl and Mark Renaud, sorry, and who else are we missing? Is that
That's
just
it.
three?
Yeah, because Laura's
Laura's here?
here.
Okay. Yes, I can see that. I'm sorry. It's been a
it's
very
okay.
long day. Okay, so before we started, I just wanted to say a thank you to our colleague Doug Pounds for his service. He decided not to run again, and so we thank him for his time on the Budget Committee. And welcome our new member, Joe Spurl, who served on the Budget Committee before, back in the 2010s with me. And did he overlap with you, Peter?
We didn't.
Or Joe?
I think we literally,
I think so.
We were passing ships in the night?
same thing for Joe. No.
Okay. Okay, well, that's great. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, so new business, the election of chair. So I will accept nominations from the floor. Oh, public comment, I'm sorry. It has been a very long day. I just said we're going to add
It's
that.
not on there, it's all right.
Public comment, if there is any. If anyone would like to come up? Nope, don't all flock at once? Okay. All right.
I didn't plan to, but I guess I will say something.
Well, you have to come up to the mic and sign in and give your name and address. So you sit right there at that chair.
This one right here?
Yep, and you can talk into that mic and you get 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, push on.
You won't be able to hear it.
Oh, I can't.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. I know,
Can you state your name, please?
yep, my name's Robert Wayne McClory, 32 Grady Hill Road. I know there was a close race between the budget committee there, and there was a recount, and I just want to say that the people doing the recount, this lady over here, and I think that's it, who was here, did excellent job. I believe to be a gold standard in New Hampshire, I really do. And that being said, I know the vote was only 2 off, and I heard somebody stepping down from the budget committee right now, and I believe that possibly the town would like, on behalf of the town, the voters of the town, whoever's next in line on that list who got the votes, I believe that that person deserves to take that seat. And that's all I really want to say, so thank you.
All right, thank you. That is an agenda item tonight, so we'll be handling that. Any other public comment? Okay, closing public comment. Now we move on to new business and election of chair. Do I have nominations? Joe.
I nominate Elizabeth Brule.
Same.
So you can second. All right, are there any other nominations? Anyone? Bueller? Anyone at all?
Nope.
You got it, Sam?
Yeah.
All right, so all those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? And I abstain.
Good luck.
Thank you, I think.
Good luck. Yes.
How many of us? Oh, I- so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 9 yes, 0 no's, 1 abstention.
Okay. Next is election of the,
I was going to say, there's 11 people
What did
here.
I do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Who do I not have on?
all right, so I'll call them out and you check them, okay?
I can
Rich?
look over our
Oh,
shoulders.
it's Laura because she was excused.
Sorry.
Sorry. They pre-marked you as excused. Okay, so that's 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention.
Okay,
That's 11 people. Motion passes,
okay.
obviously.
So now I need nominations on the floor for vice chair. Peter?
Well, I just want to nominate Sam after that amazing math.
Thank you. That's fantastic.
I'll second
Oh,
that.
you guys are so kind. All right, Samantha. And where's Pauline? Vice chair. All right.
All those in favor, raise your hands.
Thank you.
That is unanimous.
I'm going to abstain too.
Okay.
Look at that. All right, so that's 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, next up is reviewing our rules of order, which everybody had a copy of. So we have to adopt these or change them, or that's basically our options, adopt or change. Laura?
I make a motion to adopt these as they stand.
I'll second.
Okay, you got that?
Laura, and that was Brian.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion on that? Joe?
Just thought of this, not necessarily like we need to adopt it, but I think there should be kind of a discussion over when members abstain and when they don't. I think that for the most part, we're elected to vote on these things and like, I mean, I get when the school board rep abstains from a town vote or the select board rep abstains from a school vote, but like the members elected at large, I feel like largely should be voting on every single thing and not abstaining. So I think we should whether put that in the rule or just have kind of a informal discussion about that, I'm down to. But I just noticed that last year, like, I don't think you should be able to abstain from a difficult vote.
We have that?
I mean, there's been times that we've abstained from votes. There's been, people have abstained from votes.
Laura?
I tend to agree. I don't know if it needs to be a,
Right.
you know, a written rule. And I say with the caveat, I think the group's pretty understanding if for some reason someone does have like a personal reason why they shouldn't, because it's a conflict for whatever reason. I don't think that happens a ton. But yeah, I think it's good to put it out there to please vote. That's why we're here. That's why we were elected. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in favor of having the discussion, but not of having it in the rules.
Right.
I just don't think we have it within our power to control when people, of how
Agreed.
they vote. So, okay. Anything else before we vote? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Okay. Moving along. Discussion about the member-at-large vacancy. So, that gentleman was correct. Allison, it's like the mafia, she tried to leave and we didn't let her go. So she is now at the select board, so her spot is vacant for 1 year till the next election. So it was brought to my attention recently that before we vote, or before we move to bring a person on board, we don't have anything in our rules of order about what the procedure is. So that we might want to start, the committee might want to decide first, what's the procedure, and then we can move on it. The last time we did this was for Laura. What time of year was that?
I don't even remember. It feels like a really long time ago.
I did.
But I know I interviewed, I like applied and interviewed and then was chosen. I don't know if I was the only one, but
Do you remember seeing what time
Yeah,
of year?
so I
it was?
got curious, so I like looked back at the old minutes from 2022. And so somebody stepped down, we opened it up to everyone, and Derek, you have to like correct me on this time. I think it was like 2 weeks. We like opened it up. Anybody from the town could apply or submit interest. And then we had a deadline that we closed it. And then we invited all of the people in who had expressed interest, which at that time was only Laura. And we interviewed you and interviewed.
There were some questions, yeah.
Yeah, and then we voted to appoint you, and then you were appointed. And that was in, I want to say it's October 3rd minutes of 2022, maybe the
Okay.
22nd, but.
Okay, so a ways out, a ways past the election.
Yeah.
Okay, so we still have a choice here. I mean, we could do a similar process. We could open it up, invite people to apply and move forward, or we could, because we just had an election, go ahead and appoint someone. I think my feelings are well known on this. I have not been quiet about it. I think we just had an election. 1,452 people voted for the next person in a very close election. I think we should just go ahead and appoint. But if people feel differently, the committee is certainly welcome to vote and move differently. So Sam, did you just have your hand up?
Well, so I was gonna say, so I got, like, when I was reading through these minutes, there was a mention of how the school board does it. And they have an RSA, and that we have a different RSA. So then I kind of went RSA hunting. And RSA 3215, Section 7, says that we do appoint people. It doesn't really specify how we appoint people, but I do like the way that we did it last time, where we put it out, anybody who's interested, you know, we have a 2-week caveat, let's say, and then anybody who's interested expresses intent, and then, you know, we close it and then we interview them.
Okay, Joe had his hand up next.
Yes, I agree with the chair. We just had an election that was very, very, very close. I think third through sixth place was within 20 votes of each other. There's one person in this room who was in fifth place, and she is here, and she is ready to serve, and I just think we should appoint her right now.
Laura?
Yeah, I think we're in a really unique situation where rarely is it this close. So I don't mind that appointing at all, but my concern is setting a precedent. So say the next person in line lost by 400 votes. Just because they happen to also be on the ballot and get votes doesn't mean they necessarily should just be appointed. So I don't know if we are setting a precedent. This is, like I said, a very, I feel, unique situation, or if that matters at all. I'm just not sure.
It does happen, and I've been on committees that have appointed, I mean, they're all over the map on the
Okay.
way they do it. So I'm not sure we're setting a precedent that hasn't already been done. They've done it both ways.
Okay.
Brian, I'm sorry, you're doing it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I agree with you as well, and also Joe. I think it's only fair that if someone spent time, put their neck out there, they campaigned for a month and a half or 2 months, or whatever time duration that is, it's only fair that that fifth person should get appointed. I don't like the idea, respectively, I don't like the idea of opening up to the public, because if someone wanted to run for budget, they would have stepped up and run. So I think it's a disservice to those who ran to put it out to the public if they want a position on a budget committee.
Rich?
Yeah, I disagree. I'd say that the precedent's already actually been set by this committee in the previous times it's happened, where we open it up, and there's discussions, and then an appointment is made after that. As far as whether or not the person that's running in fifth place should be able to come in after, you know, not making the election, right? I don't know that that has any validity over anybody else, right? I feel like, you know, the precedent's been set. We should allow people to declare their interest, and if that person who did not get elected wants to do that, then perfectly fine.
Any other comments? Izzy, I haven't heard from you yet.
In my opinion, if they wanted to declare their interest, they would have done it 2 months ago.
Brian?
Yeah, Madam Chair, respectfully, I think that's a disservice to the governing body. The governing body are the voters. So if the voters voted for someone and it was close, that should take precedent over any other policies. The governing body is the community.
Sam?
So I guess I just want to state that, like, I'm going to make an assumption that Jess being here is expressing interest. Don't let me put words in your mouth, but like, I'm going to make an assumption. To me, assuming that she's going to express interest, it doesn't matter if we open it up to everyone for 2 weeks, close it, then vote to appoint her in 2 weeks versus appointing her right now, right? Like, I think that there's a fair amount of people here that would vote to appoint her, whether we did it now or whether we did it in 2 weeks. So it doesn't hurt to say we're gonna open it up to everybody, and like, that's the policy that we have. Versus, you know.
To the point about if you were interested, you should have shown that, you know, and ran. I can speak from personal experience that it was the whole election season, because I was newer to town-ish. It was the whole election season that got me invested and made me feel interested in, like, this was something I could do. So it wasn't for lack of caring up until the end or afterwards. That's what got me motivated, and watching the whole thing made me realize, oh, this is something I want to be involved in. And I agree with what Samantha said too.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it really is the proximity to the election and the closeness of the election. For those two reasons, I feel like it is a disservice to open it up to the public and disrespectful of those 1,452 people. I hope that's the right number. I keep saying it, but, oh, sorry.
1476.
1476, sorry. I was trying to do it off the top of my head. That voted that way. So, I mean, that for me, if we have another vacancy in the summer, then I would push very hard for it to be opened up to applications. And if we have a vacancy in October or November, I'm going to push very hard that we only consider people who have experience on this committee if they're coming in mid-budget season. So, Peter and then Joe.
I appreciate the sentiment. Governing body just elected and had the opportunity to, me as a voter, I had the opportunity to vote for 4 candidates on election day. There were 4 seats available on election day. I voted for 4. If there were 5 seats available on election day, I would have had 5 votes. If I had 5 votes, everyone else would have 5 votes. If everyone has 5 votes, what is the outcome of that election? That was 20 votes apart between 3rd and 6th. My question is, did the governing body actually decide and determine 5th place? The governing body determined 1 through 4 with 4 available votes to each voter. So in particular, when we have something this close, I think we really want to ask ourselves, do we even understand how this works? Wait a minute.
You do.
Sorry, sir, you cannot speak
I would
during the
appreciate
meetings.
that, if yeah. Because I know that I did not have 5 votes on the day of the election. I had 4. So my 5th place candidate, whoever it was, didn't get my vote. So that doesn't tell me whether or not we're accurately reflecting who our 5 top people are. Now, that said, I obviously think that someone who ran a campaign, performed well in that campaign, is someone that we as a body should strongly look at, that can come in and hopefully help us out. I am hoping that we're going to reach the conclusion that we should be asking for interest and taking that interest, and I'm hoping that Jessica is one of those people that comes forward and presents that interest. But I really think we should be asking ourselves questions about whether we fully understand the implication of what we are about to potentially move forward with.
Joe?
Yeah, I don't understand the need to kick the can down the road 2 weeks. I'm ready to vote today. I think it's very important that we fill this committee, and congratulations, Allison, but we need people that are ready to hit the ground running, and there's somebody that did express interest. And there's no really precedent setting, and I was on the committee when we appointed you as well. We can't bind the, like, future budget committee to look back on the precedent we set. We're different elected bodies at different times, so I don't even think looking back, I think it's gonna be a case-by-case basis, and I think in this situation, literally the first meeting after the election, looking at the fifth person is respecting the will of the voters as much as possible, and I think that that's the most respectful way. And I've been very vocal too, whether it was Professor Sporl or Jess or whoever was in fifth place, like that was something that I was very vocal about, like we're appointing the fifth person. I don't think throwing it out there and seeing who's interested is really necessary, because if somebody was really interested in that vacancy, they would have gone on the agenda, realized we were talking about it today, and they would have been here today.
So I need a motion, one way or the other.
Can I?
Oh,
Am I walking?
do you want
No.
to wander into this? Are you sure?
I do a little
All
bit.
right.
Because I was, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you try to change legislation in
I did.
Concord to get this done, but it didn't
I did. I
pass,
put in a
correct?
bill based on what the school board did a few years ago when
Right.
they failed to, I believe it was right after the election too. They
Maybe.
failed to appoint Lindsay Lombo, who was the next vote getter. It was Lauren, they appointed Lauren Dukas. So I actually put in a bill for that. I was actually I'm really passionate about, like, if it's directly after the election, we should respect the will of the voters as much as possible.
Right, but my point is that you couldn't get it passed in Concord because your colleagues don't necessarily believe it. But-
I mean, I wouldn't impugn motive to any rep and why they voted a certain way.
Right, but it didn't pass.
No, it didn't.
Regardless of the motive, it didn't pass because people didn't like that as an idea or a plan.
They would prefer it to be a local option, which this is it, right here.
Okay, again, I still need a motion, one way or the other. Joe?
I move to appoint Jess Putin.
I'll second it.
Appoint Jess. P-E-A-U-T-I-N?
P-E-U-T-I-N.
P-E-U.
Can you please pronounce that for me? I know I'm going to mispronounce it. Putin, okay.
Putin.
All right,
Okay, Joe and Brian.
all right. Do we need further discussion on
I
this?
just want to clarify.
Sure.
So we're voting to appoint. If that vote fails, then we have to re-vote to put it out to the
Yeah.
public? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that just a straight yes?
What?
Procedure first.
So it's just a yes, if this vote fails, it has to go out to the public as a public notice. item.
Well, no, we'll have to have another discussion to decide what somebody will have to make another motion on how we're going to proceed. So if this vote fails, then somebody could make a motion saying, I move that we put it out to the public. And if that vote fails, then we're going to be here all frickin' night talking about this one issue. But somebody's going to have to make a motion, and we're going to have to agree on it at some point. Any further discussion? Peter?
Yes. We haven't discussed this election at all that we just went through. I think, can I discuss the context of the fact that we're talking about an assignment at this moment, an election
Ugh.
that was
This-
impacted?
I think we're voting on filling this vacancy. We can have a postmortem on the election. I'm all for
This-
that.
Yeah,
but-
to me, this is part of that, though. So if you'd like to, we could now, or we could do it another, I have another question. If you want to move forward with this, I have another question.
This is kind of dicey, Peter. I mean, the thing is, the only way it would be germane is if it was, like, personally directed at this candidate, that you think there's something we should know.
Israel, is there something that you called me about prior to the election that you want to talk about?
No.
Is it because you don't want to talk about it, or?
Peter?
Point of order.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't be grilling other members.
I know it's terrible, and I know that I'm going to look, or potentially look bad. But I care about doing things ethically and appropriately. And so, yes, it sounds terrible for me to ask a colleague a question. But that colleague called me very upset one day very upset, saying that this person is out there lying and pretending to be one person and is another.
I said, it's not my wife.
It is not
Yep.
my wife.
Did I ever say a name? No. That's it. Done. This has nothing to do with this.
This is not germane to
Yeah.
our conversation.
I'm confused.
Chair.
Hold on. Call me out if you really need to. What I'm trying to get at is.
Has nothing to do with this. Wasn't even before, it was before an election even started. So,
This was during the election season.
Madam Chair, this is not,
Yeah,
this is not relevant.
Peter, you're really
It's
crossing lines
hypothetical.
here. You're really crossing lines here. And the point is, if our whole reasoning is she is appointed because she received 476 votes and was the 5th vote getter, that is, like, that's the end of it. It's not our position, it's not our place to pass judgment on that.
I have a different question. Because I realize we just adopted some rules, and maybe it would have been nice if we had put a rule in here on what we would do in this situation in here. Would a future policy for committee vacancies, would the select board create that, or would we
No, we
create
would
that
create
in
it.
these rules?
And I remind you, we have a motion on the floor.
Yes.
Yeah, it determines my vote.
Okay, well, we determine that. The committee decides how we're going to fill our vacancies.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion?
Only one question. Was there only 5 people on the?
No, there were 8.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of making the appointment, raise your hand.
All right, so, hold on, so there's Israel,
Do you want me to call them out so you can
No.
just look?
no.
Brian, Joe,
Joe, Jack, you, me. Okay.
opposed?
That is.
Peter, Rich, Laura,
Peter, Rich.
oh, and Jack. I thought you voted.
I thought you just voted in favor.
No, I didn't. I was just sitting here like this.
Okay, hold on.
Sorry.
And abstentions. Allison.
So that's 6 in favor, 3 noes, 1 abstention.
Okay, so the motion passes.
No, it's, hold on, that's
Can
10.
we,
one off.
can we, we're just gonna,
Did you count Laura? I think it was 4 no's.
4 no's, yeah.
I'm here.
There were 6 in
Rich,
favor.
Laura.
I was
Yes,
a no,
1,
not
2,
an
3,
abstention.
4.
Jack and
Not
Peter.
There's 4 no's.
There's
you're right, and
noes.
it's just that she's further down on here, so that's why I'm marking her, and then I'm just not counting her.
6, 4, 1.
Okay, so 6, 4, 1. We took a couple months off, guys, and I got rusty. So-
Okay, so the motion passes. So Jessica is now a member of the committee, but she has not been sworn in yet or completed her paperwork. So I will invite her to take a seat at the table, and you can participate in discussion, but if we take any further votes, you won't be able to vote tonight.
Okay.
But then, before our next meeting,
Where you want?
you,
Anywhere.
Sit right there.
yeah, you can sit right there.
Sit up
Or
here.
you can sit over here, and there's handouts right there. Before the next meeting, you should coordinate with Danielle about your paperwork and getting sworn into office.
Okay.
Okay? Whew. All right, moving on. Well, it's the update on the default budget is next, but do we want to talk about the election now? Should we go ahead and just rip the Band-Aid and get it done?
Do you have anything?
Do you want to start, Peter?
Do I have anything, what?
Did you want to open with it, or? do you want-
No, I mean, I'm responding to your suggestion that we discuss the election.
We had a period where we worked very hard on many budgets for this past year. And that included our town's operating budget. town's operating budget did not pass. We are now in a default. I obviously am anxious to hear from the select board of what decisions they're making in order to cope with that. I've heard from other people, because obviously I think I've heard from everyone on this committee, we don't want a default budget. I think I've heard from most people across different spectrums that they didn't want a default, and that's a disappointment. So I've heard different postmortems outside of this venue of like, well, it was this, or well, it was that. And I think, in my mind, I have to admit, I don't know what it was that made it, exactly what it was that made it so that we did not get a operating budget passed for our town this year. I believe, if we're counting votes, it was about a 700 vote difference between the support that town people provided for other articles for expenditures, give or take, let's say like the school operating budget, different contracts, and the support that they provided for the town. That's significant in terms of what the difference was. I've heard a lot of different things of what that could be, and I think we're going to discuss that. But I am going to bring up Facebook again. And I know that members of this committee did not feel comfortable, some defended it, but did not feel comfortable with the large signs that were put out throughout our town that we cannot control. I don't think I can control it. I don't think I can. But I think a few of us were very concerned about the language that was used and whether it was intellectually honest, is the opinion that I had, that it was not intellectually honest to put those numbers on there. I think a lawyer could go out and say, yep, this reflects, I believe, what might be spent year to year if we pass those contracts, right, the teacher contracts. But at least $600 of the $1,200 that was put on a very large sign, multiple places throughout our town, was made up of these teacher contracts, and not the effect in this one tax year, but the effect over multiple tax years. I'm trying to figure out, am I wrong? Am I wrong that a sign that has a bunch of small print underneath it, right, and one large thing on the front that says $1,200, right, is disingenuous? Am I wrong about it? And I asked around, and one thing that I got was from a friend of mine said, you know, the thing is, if I hadn't talked to you about this, if I hadn't had a conversation with you and I saw those signs, I would have voted no on the town operating budget, because I would have thought that was town. That by voting yes on this, that's town. We're going to keep on dealing with that every year. So I'm bringing that up, not to say that anyone can do anything about it, but the reality is I think we're going to be dealing with that again this year, and I think we should be prepared for that as well.
More comments? I would say I was very upset by the signs as well, for the same reasons you. I know Joe and I have already argued about this extensively. But ultimately, I'm going to argue that it wasn't even effective for just the reason you said, because the real driver for those numbers was the teacher's contract. And when you just put a big number out there, people are going to make assumptions about where the big tax impact is going to come. And I think they did assume it was the town. Many people did and didn't vote for it.
Effect.
Well, so.
That means, I'm not trying to say, maybe in all actuality, what the sign is telling you is good, in the sense like the part that I do agree with is we're trying to think of the overall cost of what we're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
And yet people voted yes on the things that cost them more.
That is true.
There were a lot of everything other than the Packer that we told people not to vote for, essentially, by not supporting it. Everything else that was an expenditure on that day passed. And that cost our residents more money. I'm not trying to say what you should or should not have voted on, truly. But it did cost you, in terms of your taxes, the amount you pay every year as a resident, cost you more money, the things you voted yes on, than the one thing that people voted no on.
Well, the kernel of truth behind the signs is that there are multi-year impacts for the decisions we make this year. I just think it was done very badly and not in good faith, in my opinion. But the rest, the election didn't just come down to those signs. There was more behind it than that. And I think we need to spend some time, either in this body or when we meet with the select board, trying to figure out where we can course correct for this coming year. So, Jack?
I think, in my personal opinion, not as a school board member, but in my just being here in town for a long time, I think a lot of that vote reflected on how this committee itself spoke about the number being in percentages and how our job is to present a budget that will pass the town and not default. I believe this committee is here to pass a budget that will fulfill the needs of the taxpayers in this town to keep services at the level that they've been at and that we're accustomed to, and the reason the people moved here. So I don't believe our job is to simply pass a number that will get passed and not defaulted. I think the way that the tax increases by the town after they came out of a default budget and the way those numbers are stated, I think is a little bit of a squirrely road in the way that it gets discussed here, because it clearly wasn't about just the spending of the money, because they voted in for the $400,000 that this committee cut out of the road budget and forced that to be only spent on the road with no exceptions, because once it's a warrant article, it's either up or down, right? And instead, they took that out on the town operating budget, which hurt us even more. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way the discussions are held and framed in this committee.
Laura?
So I think this all goes back, whether it's the sign or the way we talk about things, I think this all goes back to sort of the fact that people are either informed or they're not, or they're looking to be informed or they're not. Because I think we know, I think there are many of us who didn't just want a percent, like that wasn't the goal. And I know you're not saying, Jack, that that was. But we knew that when voters see a percent or a number, that is what they see, especially if they're not watching or paying attention or seeing what that money actually goes to. And I don't know, other than continuing to give factual information, I don't know how to combat any of that, because there's always going to be stuff on Facebook or on the internet that's, twisted or wrong or incorrect or used in a different way. That's why I don't do it anymore, because it's that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it fails miserably and people don't buy it, but there's no way to combat that. We have to just try to get people to care and to be interested. If voters' bottom line is still they want no increase, then that's what it's gonna be. We just need to keep doing the work of making our informed decisions so the people that are paying attention know what they're voting on. And I'm not sure how to get the other people to care or to really reflect on the work that's being done to get us to, yes, a percent or a number that has to be what it is for the town to be successful.
Jess?
I think if that made some sort of impact on people, maybe we do a better job about explaining what services it's going to provide for that amount of money, and just be transparent and explain this is the overall cost, this is the year-to-year cost, and get ahead of whatever signs you don't like. But in the end, it's freedom of speech for what they put. and we can like and not like things, but I think as a whole, if we explain what services are being improved or where money was saved and how that affects you, and just get it out there that, yes, you know, to keep certain services, it's gonna cost money, but we're doing it the most efficient way as possible, and just being transparent with the whole process.
I think that's what our public
Yeah.
hearing is supposed to do.
I know, and maybe there's ways of getting it out to more people
Okay.
and letting people ask questions, because I think that's the biggest feedback that I got from talking and meeting with people, is that they want to be able to ask questions.
But they can at the public hearing.
I know, but not everyone can go.
Wait, is it Samantha had her hand up first?
So, I guess decompressing from this election, a couple years back, we didn't ask our admin team to do a bunch of math to figure out the percentage and the dollar amount over. And in the last 2 years, we've asked Danielle and Derek to do a lot of math to figure out what the percentage would be or what the exact dollar amount would be. And I just find those signs really rotten, that we just took all of the math that they did and all of the work that they did, and it kind of got washed out very quickly. And I guess I think that moving forward into this budget year, we really have to start looking at what services we are going to start cutting. And for the people on this committee and also for the people at home, like, you know, this may sound like very Kennedy of me, but like, we need to start thinking of like what we can do for Goffstown on a volunteer basis. Like, what are you as a member of the budget committee willing to volunteer on and help to do to cut a cost down? Are you willing to start composting? Are you willing, you know, because 40% of our trash, you know, is food waste, right? And that's a loose number, don't quote me on that. But are you willing to start composting? Are you willing to start volunteering at the library? Are you willing to start being a volunteer poll worker and things like that? And, you know, I know that like I volunteer on other committees too, but I also know that it's gonna hurt, right? Like, it is going to be painful if we only have like DPW open 4 days a week, right? Like, that's gonna annoy people. If we decide to cut trash service, that's gonna aggravate a lot of people. And will it save us money? Yes. Will then other people have to start paying for private trash pickup because they don't have trucks? Yeah. You know, that's going to affect like our elderly and our disabled population who doesn't have a trash truck, you know? And so I just want us to be cognizant of that and also realize that like you are hurting other people in our town when we vote stuff down. So, thanks.
Peter, do you have your hand up?
I mean, I thought what Jessica was saying is kind of spot on. Like,
Thank you.
it didn't, well, it didn't work. If we all believed that what we supported as a budget was the right budget, right, for the town, and that was communicated to voters, then they would have supported it, right? Somehow that communication did not happen.
Joe?
Well, can I just say, like, I think it is important, some way, we have to find a way to be able to show, potentially, this is the level of services, and it really can't just be for 1 year. Like, these operating budgets, they're not really just about that 1 year. That's the reality. It's not just about the next year. That's not how towns work. You're investing over the long haul, right? We're not investing for 1 year, but the way that we're creating our budgets and the default budget that you're gonna get is going to line you up for a different trajectory, right? If we have a default budget, this is our trajectory. If we have default budgets year over year, this is our potentially, right? Can we somehow say, this is our trajectory? I don't know if that's a us thing or a select board thing or what, but this is what we're looking at in terms of what we're gonna be, how we're gonna be able to operate over the long haul. If we can fund at this level, right, that we think is necessary, and we should know why it's necessary, then we say, this is what we think we'll be able to do. We have to battle it. That's my point of bringing up the signs, not because, we're not gonna end signs, but how are we gonna do a better job of making sure that we're getting that information out there that people value? Because the reality is, people did vote for tax increases this year, like, I think Laura, you had said like, oh, they might not vote for it, but the reality is, people voted for a lot of tax increases this year at the polls. Just maybe not the one that we thought was, at least as a board, we thought was appropriate.
Well, we were pretty split on that town vote.
That's what I was going
It
to
did not have
Yeah.
it did not have the full support of the budget committee the way the school budget did. Correct. Was that your?
Yeah, I was going to bring up that, Peter said that, like, we were all, like, maybe we were all in favor.
No,
I
good point.
was
It wasn't us.
from, like, tried to be transparent, like, I wouldn't support anything over a certain percentage, and I'm probably in the same boat this year, to be honest, so we're going to keep having this conversation. I think this budget was doomed as soon as we received a 13% increase from the select board, and that's why I'm looking forward to a proposed joint meeting I see on the agenda, because I think this is something that we should communicate with them, that, they're elected, and Allison's here to represent us and vice versa, but they're elected to steer the town in a certain direction. And when it falls on the budget committee to make decisions that we aren't elected to do, we're elected to talk about budget items, but we're not elected to be in charge of the general steering of the town and what services we're going to provide and which ones we're not. Like, that's their job. And I said this last year, and I'll say it again, they didn't do their job, and they need to do their job. And I'll say it again to them, like I'll say it to them in the meeting. But this budget was doomed at 13%. I think all of us came with a good faith effort to get it down to a certain percent. 5.5, I think we ended up, or something over that. That was a percentage that worked for a majority of us, but there was also like a large minority on the committee that did not support the 5%. And so I think that we should communicate with the select board moving forward, let them know that this is, like, the 13% unacceptable, like, we need to get it, they need to tell us what they are looking for services, because it's not, like, I think the last time budget passed, it was like 2%.
It was
So,
1.7.
1.7.
The year
Yep.
before. Joe?
I just wondered, if I did the math right, just follow up on Joe's point, the voters did approve a tax increase of 5.5%, just by the articles that they approved, assuming I'm doing my math right. If everything had passed, it would have been 7.8%, more than 3 times the inflation rate. So if those signs could have been perfectly accurate if they had just read, if all articles passed, your taxes will go up 7.8% next year, not over 3 years. As it is,
Well,
the
don't
voters.
feed them the line.
No, they should be accurate, though.
That would have been perfectly
Right, you're
accurate.
right.
Right? As it is, the voters did approve significantly more than the inflation rate as a tax increase. So, just to,
Jack, and then I'm going to make a comment.
Okay. I think that transparency is out there for the people who want to find it. The information is all out there. It's pretty transparent. I know it's way transparent on the school side. I think it's pretty transparent on the town side. And I think that gets stated. I think that you can say it was 7-8%, but we came off a default budget from the year before. So you're sort of messing with things when you voted through contracts that would give people raises to try and bring them up to get paid the average salary of people doing comparable jobs in New Hampshire. I think if you really believe that it's all a percentage-based argument as a budget committee, because you have no power to cut specific items unless you get them put on the warrant article and vote up or down on the warrant article. You only have the power to put out a number, right? That's what you really do. You put out a number, it's a bottom line budget, right? Jared said it 100 times. So if that is your case, then I don't often agree with Joe, but if you're gonna come forward and say,
Pocket.
here's a percentage, then you come out ahead of time and you say, here's a percentage that if you meet this percentage, we will unanimously vote, because that's what really swings the vote when it's recommended by budget committee, recommended unanimously. It almost unanimously passes. Then you take that percentage and you give it to the people we've entrusted to run the town, the professionals, the people who run the numbers, the people who do the efficiency studies, the people who set up the vehicle replacement things, and you say, here's the percentage that we would get behind, and you put that forward ahead of time. And then find out if they can't meet that percentage, so that everyone will join in and sing Kumbaya and vote for it unanimously, right? Then you can question, how did you get to these numbers that are above this percentage that we feel is the proper percentage that the whole town's gonna vote for? Not that I think any of you are clairvoyant and can predict that percentage, but that seems to be a reasonable thing. Instead of going line by line and cutting things that you're not sure how they have the effect, you're not really comparing numbers when you say no to certain trucks, because that could be costing us more money, because now we're running the old junker instead of having a fixed payment that doesn't come with, fix it up money, repair it money, and other things like that. So if that's what your belief is, then set right behind it. State it right up front, push it out, and let the professionals, right, because that's what we hire as a town. We hire professionals that are more knowledgeable than we are to run the business of the town and the school.
So, just a second, I said I was going to go next. So I have been resistant to that idea, in part because it's basically a tax cap. And it basically means the end of the budget committee. And I think that we have a budget committee because people still expect us to go through and check the line by line and make sure that there isn't budget creep and all sorts of, that it becomes completely untethered from the lines if you don't have somebody going through and checking it. I do think the percentage matters. I think it matters a lot, even though the money is smaller, definitely on the town side. But I think, I had hoped that 5% was going to pass because the 2 years before, we were well under the rate of inflation. And I was hoping the townspeople were going to give a little grace and go for the 5%. They didn't. I was wrong. But I think for most people, they're looking at that number and thinking, that's not sustainable. I cannot do a 5% increase year after year after year on their town taxes. And I think that is really the motivating factor. I think that's why the school, I don't think they ever put more than 3% increase on the ballot. And I think that's why the budgets are more likely to get passed. So that's just my 2 cents worth. But I do think the percentages matter, and I think we have to talk about them. And I also think we have a responsibility to, yes, put budgets forward that support services, but also take into account the people who live here and what they can pay. We got to balance those two. Allison, do you have a comment?
I was kind of going to say some of what you were just saying is how the dwelling on the percentages, while I get it, a 13% increase on the town side is enormously different than the 13% on the school side.
Yeah.
So putting this blanket, everything has to be at whatever percent, one, doesn't truly show what it's going to impact your taxes, what you're actually going to be paying. And also, the town has taken the brunt of it the last, now 3 years. We did default, 1-point-something% increase from that, and then another default.
Yeah.
They are already so far behind, and the school, we all know, the school calculates their default budget differently than the town. We're basically still trying to do the town on essentially 2024 numbers, because you only got that tiny little increase in 2025. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm paying a heck of a lot more now than I was in 2024 for everything. So if you don't think the town is paying more for everything, then you're not paying attention.
Jessica?
So just hearing everyone and knowing, the town voted maybe because they had to balance what they said yes to, what they said no to. But I think, coming from the industry I come in, capital budgets is all we talk about. And you have to find ways to save. So like every dollar that we want to increase our budget, we have to find some savings to kind of balance it. And not dollar for dollar, because I know inflation and costs, but you have to find savings too. It's not just let's cut, but how can we save? So whether that's co-op agreements or different options, I think every department, I don't know if we can collaborate and give them advice on how to pass these budgets. But I think if you're also telling the people, like, we saved X and this is why we need to go up I think that will help.
So we're kind of segueing into our next agenda point, which is this discussion with the select board that I requested. And you know what? I'm sorry I did that without even asking you guys. It was just sort of a spur of the moment thing. And I'm like, we've kind of talked about it last year, and I sensed everybody's frustration, and I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And if you guys decide you don't want to do it, we can cancel.
No, it was
But,
great.
anyway, so, yeah, I mean, what do we, well, actually, I'm skipping here, the impact of the default budget. We can come back to that one in a minute. But why don't we go ahead and finish this, since this is what we're talking about now? And what we want to do with this meeting, and what we think would make it more productive. I will say this, I do agree with Joe, that 13%, I met several people who thought that the town budget was still a 13% increase that they were voting on. And so they had paid attention, they saw the union leader headline, and they didn't see anything else. And that's what they thought they voted on. So it is frustrating. So what do we want to talk, I mean, it sounds like we want to talk to the select board about whether we should give them a percentage. We talked about this last year, and it was too late. We already had a budget by then. It's not too late this year. Laura?
So is the giving them a percentage, is that idea that we will not take a budget from you unless it is at least this percent? And then we'll still continue to do our stuff, but like, don't show us a 13%, because that's preposterous. Come in at least here, and then we feel like you have done your due diligence with prioritizing. We can take a deeper look. Is that the theory behind that, basically?
I think everybody has different theories. That was my theory, but we could do it differently and say, this is the amount we're willing to pass and nothing more, but that's up to us. Peter?
Kind of along the lines of what we were talking about, with like, this is what things look like at default, this is what things look like at X percent or X dollars. I want to know that work was put in ahead of time. First and foremost, we definitely should be looking at lines no matter what going forward. We
Yeah.
cannot stop looking at lines. The reason you look at lines is to keep things from even happening in the first place. The fact that someone knows that you're watching means they know that you're watching, and so that it affects their decision-making. It's really important that you have that accountability. So absolutely can't move away from that. So on that end, I don't know. I know I feel like I'm always asking too much of them, but the reality is I want to know, like, okay, if you come in at this percent over last year, what do you think we can accomplish? Where do you think that puts us at? And if you come in at percent, where do you think it puts us at? And what do you really think we want to be working towards? It doesn't have to just be like one thing. It can be, this is what default looks like, this is what it looks like if we, follow inflation, this is where we're actually at in terms of like where our costs have actually increased. If we wanted to sustain, I don't know, if we wanted to sustain services that we had in 2024, this is what it would actually cost. I want you to know, this is what it would cost. Can you get it passed? Nah, I don't think so. But maybe we can get you what 2023, I don't know.
Joe, next, and then Jack.
And me agreeing with Jack again, I would say that, well, I was gonna say something separate, that the select board should also instruct department heads not to bring a budget over a certain percent. Allow the experts to say, we're not gonna take anything above 5%, we're gonna send the budget, like, instruct department heads to do that. And let them be the experts and then prioritize what, like, is necessary, like, staffing firefighters versus, HVAC at the Powerville station or something like that. Like prioritize exactly what is important in their budgets, and then the select board can then, if they decide to add or take away, they can make those decisions. But let the department heads start. And I don't know. I wasn't privy to like the conversation between select board and department heads, but I think it could be done in a more strict way, not to bring a budget that is over a certain percent.
Yeah. Jack?
And I don't want to put confusion. I wasn't vying for a percentage either way on either side, and I wasn't suggesting to not go line by line through the budget and look at the things. I was just stating the facts of what the power that this board has, right? And how the budget gets brought forward, and that the power of this committee doesn't yes, it's great to go line by line and find the things, like say the 500,000 of the insurance money from the school board, right, or the school budget, right? That, I think that's all good, but the way the discussions happen here, and this is what a lot of what gets viewed, and then the way the votes go through, and how it states on the warrant articles, or the, whether it be the whole budget or the pieces, that's what people are looking at, right? All the people that you're saying we need to be better informed, who aren't informed, they're all going in there and reading, recommended by the budget committee. Unanimously, it goes through, right? Unless the select board said no, or the school board said no, and the budget committee said yes, then maybe it doesn't. But when it's recommended by the two things unanimously or one vote off, it pretty much, I would be willing to bet, passes.
I did hear some people grumble that they couldn't understand the warrant articles, but those are, Derek, we don't have control over the way those articles are written, right? I mean, the state decides how those things are going to be written. Can we append? We can't append it? Here's the version for regular people.
There's the voter's guide.
That's what
The voter's guide is, yeah.
Plain English.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Laura?
So I 100% agree with Joe that this is a department head situation. It's not their fault. It just hasn't been, I believe, set to them in the correct order, because I also agree with Jack. So if the department heads are given a directive that do your prioritizing cutting first before someone else decides it for you, don't turn in a budget over 4%, whatever it is, then it's less likely that we'll have to go back because the experts have done it. But now we're doing it in the opposite order, where we're like, you hand us this everything, and then we have to go back to you and say, okay, now do it. And that's the wrong order. They should be coming at a percent. I know, I do it for work. We come in at 3, and then if we get 2.5, awesome. If we get 3, even more awesome. But you come in at the number that the directive is. Granted, we're working under a town manager, so it's a little different. But you decide. You are the expert. Like Jack said, we hired you to do this. This is the situation as it is, unfortunately. We're trying to catch up from years of underfunding. But it's real easy to take something down, and it takes so long to build it back up. So that's basically where we are. Give it to us in that order.
Okay. Sam?
Maybe switching gears a tiny bit, I'd like to see what the department heads and also what the select board thinks that we could turn into a CRF. So I think that I would really like for there to be some kind of DPW apparatus fund.
Replacement schedule.
Well, there is a replacement.
Well, I
schedule,
mean,
yeah.
like, thank you, for vehicles. So a CPR for their vehicles.
Yeah, and so, and
Okay.
it, I, like how the fire department has theirs is it's not just like, they don't have one CRF for the tower and one CRF for the tanker and one CRF for the ladder, it's one big fire apparatus fund. And it would be nice for DPW to do something similar. It'd be nice if the road plan maybe was in a CRF fund.
So the problem with that, Sam, is that you have to have off years for a CRF fund to work, because you have to be saving in the off years for the big expense in the on years. And both the road plan and the DPW vehicles are a steady year-by-year expense.
Right.
So,
But I guess what my thought is that even with the road plan, where I'm sure that there is some portion of the road plan, even if it is just a couple dollars, that gets put into the unassigned fund balance. And so to keep that saved from the unassigned fund balance, the road plan will always be, it gets to keep its own change.
you can,
It's great in theory, but you can't get the town to pass the budget for the stuff we need now, and now you're asking them to pass that budget and also to take money and start putting it into a fund for future.
Well, and
It's,
yeah, and I guess.
it should have been, you're right, it should have been done for the last 15, 20 years. We should have been putting money into
Right.
all sorts of different CRFs to make sure we had the money. But right now, no one wants to put money even into the budget.
Well, and I guess I'm also thinking that moving $1.3 million out of the operating budget and into a CRF will make the town's budget, like, it will make it a lot easier for us to hit that percentage that we talked about, you know? Because we'll be,
Are you talking about the 1.3 for the road plan?
yeah, if it's in a CRF right
But what
next
if they
year.
don't, what if they don't approve to put the money in the CRF, and then they do pass the budget, and now you have no money at all for the road plan?
It's a risk.
And
And that is the risk, and that's also like the education that we as committee members will have to give to the voters of like, look, like, I think the goal this year is gonna be the same as the goal last year. I realize we didn't get it, but like, I would hope that everyone on this committee wants to create a budget that will pass, right? Nobody, whatever your percentage number is, you wanna make a budget that passes. And so if for some reason we were to cut it from the budget and then we were to elect to put it in a CRF and that budget failed, then we don't fix the roads. And then that is the risk you take.
So the voters voted, I don't remember the exact year, 2015, 2016, that they wanted the road plan money in the operating budget. So you'd have to start with another warrant article to reverse that warrant article. What?
I almost think it was before that,
Was it earlier than
but
that?
I'm not sure. Don't quote me.
It was somewhere in the 2010s.
Yeah.
Because we used to do that all the time for just that reason, and then the voters were like, no, this is the thing we really want done. We want that in the operating budget. You guys figure out how to pay for it.
Every year.
Yeah,
For the
every
next
year.
20 years,
Yeah,
and it has never passed. It's never stayed.
right. Brian?
I think Laura was before me.
Oh, thank you,
You could
Brian.
go.
As far as the education piece, if people still thought we were voting on a 13% increase, I'm not saying we shouldn't try, but I think it's going to be very hard to educate people about like what you just said, considering where we're at right now with the level of people that are understanding what's going on or wanting to put in the time to understand. And I don't want to sell people short either, because I know people are putting in time and trying to understand. It just feels like a big ask of the public when the level they're at is like a 13% budget, or not sure that they actually did vote for a 5.5% increase. That just seems like a lot to try and get out there when we seem to struggle getting simpler ideas out there. And not for the lack of people wanting to know, it's just that information for some reason just gets like lost in a cloud on Facebook or whatever, and it's just really difficult.
Brian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going back to what we were talking about, the joint meeting, I think it's a good idea. Hopefully it'll be constructive. I don't have any percentages in mind as of yet, but I do have a focus area. I want to focus on hopefully us working with the select board and the department heads to talk about overtime budgeting. That seems like it'd be a big issue that I don't have a full grasp, and not to be crass, but even some department heads, even on record, saying they have a hard time budgeting. So I really want to unpack that, because that is really very telling from fire and police about their OT budgeting is not fully, it seems like not fully baked, not fully understood. So I really want to wrestle with that. So.
Okay, that's a good point. Izzy?
So from what I understand with the overtime, it's considered a one-time expense. It's because it's not always set in stone. But if you go back through the years, you can get an average of what is actually used and try to get it better,
Yeah.
more closer, in my opinion.
Okay. Jessica?
So talking about past years, so for departments, maybe setting expectation, be proactive, like you were talking about, and then look at your actual spend from the prior years and move on from that, and where you can save money, and then forecasting forward, that will probably help with the overtime. And then when they add items to the budget, give the data, like business cases, especially, $450,000 truck. and provide, what's the downtime plus repairs costing, so if we get a new one. And I think giving more information is going to help explain why that cost is there, and that rolls into the CRF. If you have that, because the replacement schedule is a known cost, it's going to happen, that spreads it out for taxpayers over years. Instead of $450,000 in 1 year, we can put X amount per year and make sure that those trucks are always on the road and safe and compliant, and that replacements are coming.
Okay, Allison?
I was just going to touch upon the overtime. I think the problem and why it's a hard number to kind of piece down is that it literally depends on what happens in their departments. Think about it, if a police officer is called into active duty, they're now down a guy, and other people have to make up that person, I shouldn't say guy, that person's time. Same thing with DPW and fire. When there's an emergency, they have to go, possibly work overnight. We just had that flooding issue. That's why they can't lock that down, and that's one of those figures that is not in the default budget. So even though it's pay, they consider it a one-time, it does not get carried over. When everyone says it's no big deal to go to the default budget, that's one of the big things that we've been talking about, is that it does matter. And that's money that is no longer there, and that's what it's used for. When people are sick, all those things that require people to work extra time, because you can't just push the job down the road, right? You can't have a police officer who's out for a month because they're sick and just wait and let them do their job or catch up later. There is no catch up in those things.
I do have a question, though, about that, because, I was at that select board meeting, and the whole presentation on the fire department really rattled me. But in part, getting back to Brian's question, so in 2020, I was temporarily on the budget committee. I was like a last-minute fill-in, and we didn't have 24/7 fire coverage then. And part of the motivating factor on the budget committee was that the fire department's overtime line was huge. And the argument was, once we go to 24/7, we can lower that line, because it's not efficient, because you're paying for overtime, you're paying time and a half. So it'd be cheaper to hire a person to cover that than to pay overtime. But then in that presentation a couple weeks ago, that was the chief's argument, that I don't have overtime in my budget, and therefore I cannot staff the department at this appropriate level. And I'm just confused about that. So, I don't expect you to answer that
Yeah,
right now,
yeah.
but at some point, I would like that clarified,
Right.
why we aren't staffing, so that, there's got to be some overtime, but
Right.
it sounded like we were more dependent on it than I had thought we were.
And the short answer to that is that there's not enough, there's a national shortage of firefighters.
But we're fully staffed.
Correct. Fully staffed.
Yeah, the fire department's fully staffed, so
Okay.
it's not even a vacant position.
I know they're fully staffed, and I'm going to go out on a slight limb, but I know they're fully staffed for what we're allowing them, but it doesn't mean that you always have enough firefighters to cover the shifts.
Yes.
Maybe.
So we voted in 24/7 fire service, but we didn't
Well, I don't know
approve
if we
the
did
correct
that then.
number of people to actually deliver 24/7
Yeah,
fire service?
Elizabeth, so, because fire is my hugest thing, I say it every meeting, I think. And I think, I remember asking the chief, are we fully staffed to your level of what we think we should be staffed? And the answer is no. We're fully staffed to, like what Allison said, what we've allowed staffing to be, but not the amount of firefighters that we would ideally have for a town this size.
Well, maybe that's something they should look at.
Yeah.
Jack and then Peter.
Just one thing I forgot to say before was, I think that also when you look at how we save money is, like you're saying, that if we're gonna, if we wanna spend more money, we have to show where we're gonna save money. But some of that is built in by the revenue streams that we're not collecting, that we have collected in the past. So we have to raise our taxes just so we can stay level funded when costs get downshifted to us and we don't see the same revenue streams as we were seeing, right? That definitely comes down to the property tax thing. You want to save money in this town, and everyone can beat around the bush. Okay, the school budget, the town budget, right? The biggest cost is the people.
The people, yeah.
And everyone is reluctant to cut the people because it comes back to hurting your neighbor. But if you think your taxes are gonna go backwards or go down or be changed by some big thing, or even stay level funded, then you gotta decide to cut people. That's, right? You can beat around the bush all you want, but you're not changing the cost of fuel, you're not changing the cost of the truck, you're not changing the mileage of the roads that we have, or the number of kids we have in the school, or what it costs to run the buildings, right? You can't really drain that much out of the budget to change the numbers that you're talking about. So if you think we're gonna go backwards and pay less, then you have to be talking cutting people.
Peter?
Really quickly, what time frame were you considering in terms of when we would have this joint meeting?
I think we're looking at May 5th. So part of the push was that, the department heads start building their budgets in the summer. Because I think they usually present in like late August or September. Yeah, you want to come up, Danielle? And the other
So
reason is
present the
because
CIP.
one of the things we haven't even talked about yet, but which is sort of my personal bugaboo, is the CIP process, which starts in May.
Yeah, the CIP process starts in May, so the department heads are bringing forward those projections for what they see 6 years out. The school is doing the same, because they go through the same CIP committee. It's a subcommittee of the planning board. And then following that process, they immediately transition into building their budgets through June, July, and August. They're presenting to their governing bodies, so it's a long process, honestly, for our department heads. They're looking at these numbers, they're using averages over 3 to 5 years, they're looking at actuals, so there's a lot of data that goes into it. They're definitely not waiting till the last minute and throwing numbers together.
Okay.
So May 5th. How firm is that?
How firm is that, Danielle? May 5th?
It's up to this committee.
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo.
But is it Taco Tuesday?
For those,
No, it is the Taco Tuesday.
Oh, my God.
Yep, Cinco de Mayo.
April 21st was also a date that was thrown out there, but the school has an event in the theater, so we just weren't sure about parking.
Okay, and we don't know about the select board, right? If they're available both nights? We can go back to them. Do people have a preference, April 21st or May 5th?
May.
May 5th?
The 5th.
May?
Yeah, May too, yeah.
May. Okay, all right, let's try for May 5th. Allison, if you can, well, I'm sure Danielle and Derek will talk to the select board too, but. Okay, so other things to discuss with them. Well, I had two things. One kind of relates to CRFs and is a little controversial, and I'm not sure if it's going to work. But right now, we spend almost all of our capital budgets on vehicles. And the town has very, very low debt. Have we looked into, instead of buying these vehicles, leasing them?
I'm all in on that.
Me too.
I have no idea. I have no idea if the numbers will work. So I have not looked into this. It was proposed to me by somebody else as a possibility, and I just thought, maybe we should talk about this if we're gonna really try and like carve out, buy something other than vehicles.
I will say there's, just real quick, the Hillsborough County Sheriff actually called me about that proposal too, because that's something that they're looking at, like on a county level too, if it's like less expensive. I think we should look into it.
So in certain vehicles, there are communities that lease police vehicles for 3 years and then they get rid of it. In this town, it's a frontline police cruiser for 3 years. Then it becomes a supervisor vehicle for a few years. Then it becomes a DPW vehicle. We're getting 10 years of life. That, on a leasing model, that's not likely to work, but if the select board directs police and fire on some of their command vehicles and DPW to look at that, then I think then that would, but that's really a question for the select board. But
Yeah.
Londonderry leases their vehicles. They lease them for 3 years, they get a brand-new one, and they send that 3-year-old one, they don't see it anymore because they're buying new vehicles for DPW to drive around in. They're buying a vehicle for their building inspector to go around in. It's not those departments getting the hand-me-downs.
Could we buy their hand-me-downs? For all the second-line vehicles, all the
Yeah, but they're-
supervisors and the
leases, so
DPW
bring them
people, and just keep leasing the more
Well, I guess we
expensive
kind of are
ones?
now,
kinda are,
without,
yeah.
without the financing costs.
Okay.
I guess,
It's a valid question, though.
Could we what?
Could we lease our first-line vehicles and buy our second-line vehicles used?
Used.
Is that,
Usually
tell
with
me why or why
leasing,
not we couldn't do that?
usually with leasing companies, they do, and they'll give you a book value at the end of your lease. And it's, I mean, I've done it in construction and it's worked out because then you're not buying it. If you do want to turn it in, I mean, I think it's just the cost analysis of what we do now versus that.
So your maintenance costs would go down, and,
Because then you don't have old vehicles like a DPW truck with 12,000 engine hours or all these things.
Sam, did you have your hand up?
well, I guess I was just thinking, like, it would be interesting to see if this was just a police department feature, or if this would be for everyone else, and if, what the cost would be to, I mean, the police department has like 20 vehicles, so if we just leased all 20 of them and then put their 20 frontline vehicles, we just parked them and then started using them as, you know, when, we'll let DPW, or not DPW, like Parks and Rec drive a truck, you know, forever, and then when it falls apart, they've got another one sitting in the parking lot.
But you also lose value, that if you did turn in with us within a certain amount of time, you can get more money selling it than keeping it to a point where you're spending more on maintenance.
Yeah.
And you can rent all sorts, like we do specialty trucks at work, dump trucks. I mean, there's so many things.
Joe?
I mean, I just pulled, like, you can lease fire trucks, you can lease ambulances. I mean, we don't have to just look at just cruisers, you know. I think it's something, Allison, worth communicating and looking into.
I just think it's worth looking
Michelle.
into. I'm not saying I'm sold on it. I'm just saying it was an idea. So, Jack?
No, I was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you raised your hand. Oh, okay.
I either gotta be here or no place.
I think I have the spot over here.
Right here,
It's
yeah.
either you or Jared, and I can't see the.
Can I have one other thing for the, I know there's something that I have always heard. I don't know the truth of this statement, but the way that the school calculates their default budget is different than the way that the town calculates their default budget. And it would be interesting for the town to maybe change how they do their calculations.
I
Or
think
maybe
they've
this-
had these conversations, and I think this is a bit of a sore point, and I think they've had these conversations. I think they're well aware of what their options are and their responsibility is.
Yeah, and I guess maybe I'm just making it more sore.
I wouldn't stir this hornet's nest, honestly, Sam. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to bring up with them was CIP. Who's been on CIP? Who's been our rep? Sam's been our rep, I was a rep once, anybody else? Okay. So my beef with CIP is basically that, well, I mean, I know we are often accused that why do they even do CIP because we just throw it all out, the budget committee does. But I also, none of those projects are vetted really, they are prioritized, they are giving priorities, and the CIP committee does consider them carefully, and I know, I've heard that department heads spend a lot of time getting a lot of information and putting these proposals together. But I think that the select board needs to be vetting these things before they go to CIP, because CIP doesn't really feel empowered to say, yeah, we're not going to do that this year, or we're not going to do that at all. That's not their role. They're not elected. They're appointed. And I just feel like the select board needs to be making some of those decisions before things get plotted out on a spreadsheet that we're going to buy it this year, and we're going to do this next year, and whatever we're going to do. I think that we've kind of got it flipped. And it has sort of a feel that things get passed through, and, well, it went through CIP, and then it went through the planning board, and now it's gone through the select board, so it must be okay. But I'm just not convinced that we're setting priorities properly for this. Peter?
So you're saying like at CIP, you don't feel like they're getting like that layer of scrutiny before it comes to us, like?
Yeah, and I feel a little bit like
Might
it's
not even be set up to do.
throwing
the layer of
spaghetti on the
scrutiny.
wall and seeing what sticks, rather than saying, we need to invest in this, and we're gonna make the case that this is what we need.
So like in the 2 years that I was on the CIP committee, it was specifically stated, like, we are not a budgetary committee. So like, if on the CIP spreadsheet, 5 years out, there is a brand-new police station for $30 million, it is not my job to, even as a budget committee member on CIP, to be like, we need to change that number, or we're not doing that, you know what I mean? Or we need to push that out. Like, it was very much to look at the bottom line number of the tax impact and try to level that across all the years.
Brian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the spirit of joint meetings, why couldn't we have a joint meeting with the planning board? Because the planning board is responsible for the CIP.
Well, you were on planning board.
And that's the thing. When I was on there, to be honest with you, 2 years, and this is not anything negative against the current chair or the past chair or vice chair, is that we didn't spend a lot of time on it. But they own CIP. So I think there should be a joint meeting where we discuss that and really vet it to make sure it's something we're proud of that we can bring forward. So
So do you mean the process, or do you mean the actual CIP, every year, the CIP?
I think there should be more collaboration between this body and the planning board before it gets finalized. I think we should have more input in general.
Okay. Peter?
Are you kind of suggesting that similarly, but more so between the select board and planning? It's like,
Yes.
if CIP is under planning, is that essentially what you're saying, is like you want to see them? I can't speak to it. I don't know what level of scrutiny happens and where it happens, but
Yeah, my sense is that planning usually accepts what CIP produces. So my concern is more with the select board setting priorities and making these decisions, and the police station is a great example. I mean, it's like, well, if we're gonna do a police station in 2029 or 2030, we should have been saving for it like 10 years ago.
We have a
So,
saving mechanism.
well, we have no saving mechanism, you're right. But,
You can't pass the operating budget, how we
yeah,
pass the
well,
savings
exactly,
mechanism.
well, exactly. I mean, but that's the other problem, right, is that CIP gets squeezed out over and over and over again because it's the only place we can go to try and keep the budget down. And at some point, we have to make a decision. Are we gonna commit to some CIP expenses and lower operating expenses? Or are we just gonna kind of give it all over to operating expenses?
Is it-
And- Go ahead.
It's, CIP isn't just a one-time thing, it's an operating budget too. It's just only considering things that are over $50,000.
Is it 25 or is it
something like that. 50 now?
25.
25.
That should probably
Okay.
be revised. It's been 25 for as long as I can remember it.
So,
It changed 2 years ago.
so it's
Are they-
more for.
Really?
Yeah, it used to be lower.
Oh, geez.
Right, so, yeah, so it's for the big ticket items and supposed to be not things that are reoccurring in the budget, more
Right.
so one-time, big expenditures. So that's why it's seen as, just trying to keep the tax rate from jumping up and down. Because, and the other mechanisms that do that is when you're gonna do the police station, you bond it, put it out for 30 years, or the school, or
Right.
and then you're just having placeholders on extended years, and the current chair the last few times has been way more concerned with what's happening in the current budget year, and is willing to hear the points of in the out years, the 5 years out, in the big picture, but realizing that the focus is gonna be on what's up for this next budget cycle. If that makes sense.
Laura?
I feel like CIP, by the time we get it, it's almost like it's not being taken seriously because everything just keeps getting deferred and pushed. Like, I haven't seen a year yet on Budget Committee where we looked at CIP and we were like, all right, well, this is coming up and we have to think about it and plan for it and come up with a mechanism and do something like that. I haven't been doing this for that long, but that hasn't happened yet. So it's kind of like it feels very pretend,
Yeah.
and that's not a good vibe for it overall anyway. Because so many people, it sounds like, are putting in a lot of time and effort to plan this out. It's not being thrown together last minute, and there's multiple committees looking at it and things like this. At level scrutiny, I don't know either, but people are putting in way too much time for us to keep, and I mean us as a people in general, for just to be like, no, sorry, no, we're pushing that, and not taking it seriously or planning ahead for it at all. It's a waste of everybody's time, the way it currently is being treated, in my opinion.
Can I ask a question? So are they getting quotes and engineers and
Yeah.
this costs
Yeah,
money and then
yeah.
it just goes?
Oh, no, it doesn't necessarily cost money.
No, it's usually
No.
like in-house.
Okay, so they don't get engineers or anything?
I don't
Just-
think they're spending money on things that have not been approved.
I think it's like a light
Depends. Architectural
Oh, okay.
drawings for like
level.
additions.
Like,
and stuff.
Yeah,
In-
so architect drawings, because they'd have to get a number for a police station from somewhere. So
For something like that.
we are spending money, and then it kind of gets pushed away, like you said. So can we not find a savings mechanism? Because isn't that the best plan?
It is, but nobody wants to
Again,
fund it.
Right.
right, but the savings mechanism is the CRF.
Yes, so there was huge talk about that.
Right.
I'm
I
on
mean, I've been
board.
talking about it for 3 years, since I heard what they
I'm on
were.
board because that is gonna save money, and I think it's explaining to people. We keep hearing, and I'm a huge advocate, save money for the taxpayers. That is the best strategic thing to do long-term, to really plan, because it can't go year by year. It's a long process to do any of this. And if you need a new school or a police station or whatever in the future, that's 10-year plan or whatever, however many years. And if you're gonna spend money on an architect or engineer and then just let that money go to waste, that's nonsense. We should be saving to get there.
I agree with you, but I would point out also that unless the CRF is funded by the unreserved fund balance, it gets voted down. Traditionally, historically, voters won't put the
But
money
if
into
we
it.
all agree and we get out there and we talk to everyone and you explain it, you know, this is the best way to save money instead of hitting you that 1 year with the full expense or, you know, bonding it and having an interest payment for all this time. If we can save ahead of time, we're gonna save so much more money.
We can try. So wait, I had Peter and then Laura and then Sam.
I thought we were off for a second, I thought for me.
It was
jumps
green
around.
for a while.
Gotcha.
It bounces around.
Oh, I'm learning. I was about to say, I was just kind of asking Jill, like, I think in the past, I've kind of been hearing this around the room, like, oh, if we can't get that to pass, we can't get that to pass. I think a lot of it has been whether or not we support something too. Yes, there's, whether it's coming from unassigned fund balance or whether it's coming from taxation and all this other stuff that we've talked about. But the reality is how strong our support for something is, has been a huge factor as well, I think. So we can't just be like, oh, well, we can't get that to pass. Well, if we believe in it, there's a good chance that people will support it too.
Okay, Laura?
I mean, this is the struggle we keep having. We keep talking about funding things through unassigned fund balance or asking for money to put in this, and the people are saying no. They have the explanation. We all need to get behind and not say, unassigned fund balance is, you know, just a excess money and they should be given back to taxpayers. No, it will be given back to taxpayers in the sense that if we put it towards the new fire truck that we need, then we will have it. So if your house catches on fire, we will be able to service you. Like, that is how it goes back to the taxpayers. So it's conversations like that that some of us are trying to have because that is how it works, Jessica's exactly right.
Well, I was saying the capital reserve fund because
No,
unassigned.
but you need money, you
Yeah,
need to put money in it.
but I think explaining that unassigned isn't our savings account. We need to make a savings account. And this is our 5-year, our 10-year plan. Instead of saying, well, we're gonna use our surplus, but planning and explaining that to people.
I feel like that's what we're doing.
And we don't have a
People-
CRF.
Well, no, but when we put a CRF forward, we want to initially fund it with the unassigned fund balance, so then everything gets voted down. So I think we should keep doing that, because I think we do need to save for these CIP things, because we're not doing a very good job at all of putting money aside. And the unassigned fund balance is a very good tool to get it going, and then say, okay, this is helping taxpayers. This is money that, yes, we've already raised, so it is taxes, but it is going towards this. And then, yes, we will also have to ask in these years to fund this, because that is how savings work. You have to put money into it. It doesn't just happen, so it needs to come from somewhere.
Well, yeah, I think that's smaller chunks over the years.
That's what we're
Instead
doing.
of, well, no, because it was the 450,000 for that truck at unassigned. When you throw that out there 1 year and say, we want the full amount versus 10,000 for the next however, or 20,000, you're gonna save more.
You know what also helps? When you actually buy the truck when you have the money instead of transferring it somewhere else. That's what happened in 2023.
That's a good point.
Sam and then Jack.
So, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just trying to figure out what
Oh.
Izzy was saying.
So I was thinking about when Parks and Rec talked about a pool and they had money, they proposed it to the voters to fund a study to have a pool, right? I know I'm terribly
No, that's
quoting
right.
this,
No, you're right.
but everyone can kind of hear. And that got voted down. And so that was a CIP item that we really did put forth to the voters, and then it got voted down at the end of the day. And so I guess I wanted to, yes, there was some money spent before that got proposed to the voters to propose what the pool would look like. But it wasn't like the CIP is being created and then we're disregarding it, and then we are losing out on money for planning. I think another, maybe problem with this CIP is that when I think of capital improvements projects, I kind of think of things that are fun, And not to say that a dump truck is not fun, but that feels more of something that is necessary to do a job, right? Whereas a new school or a new police station or a pool, those things feel a little bit more we will, we're gonna get to that, we want them, we're gonna get to them when we get to them. But if we don't have a dump truck, whatever that dump truck is
plow the
doing.
road.
Right, they're not plowing the road, and that's a necessary thing for DPW to work. If they don't have the tools, it doesn't matter how many people we do or don't employ, the roads aren't gonna get plowed. So I think that's maybe another way, another problem with CIP, that we're putting things in there that are necessary.
So separate out, well, I mean, I think that's why they prioritize them, and they're all
Yeah.
ranked, 1 through 4, I believe, about how
Right.
necessary things are.
But I will
So-
say that each year, whatever is in that first year column or in the this year column, they're almost all ones. They're almost all immediate priorities, Because it's not immediate 4 years out and then it becomes immediate.
Allison?
So I have a couple things. One, I hear you on, everyone was frustrated by the $450,000 they needed for the truck, the trash truck. But that should have been being saved for long before most of us were even on budget committee. So now we're currently dealing with the fact that we need this now. The thing is rusting, it's got so many miles on it. And we keep talking about a CRF, which is a great idea for the other things that are on CIP, but right now, we need stuff. And our 10-year-old budget committee members weren't helping us get to this point. There's a lot of our town that's in a position for that. I was just thinking, and so then the other part, we keep throwing out also, we should be saving for things like a police station or a new school. Except those types of things, you're not saving in a CRF to buy a new school. You're going to have to bond that. You'd have to put millions of dollars into a CRF every year for many years to be able to afford
70.
those types of things. Did you say 7?
70 years.
70 years, yeah, well, sure. But my point was those are,
1 million.
I don't want to
70
be,
million.
because they're all on CIP, clumping that into the same idea of how we're going to fund that. You don't fund a new police station and a dump truck the same way.
Jack?
We're a government organization, we're not a business. Those two models run differently. A vehicle replacement schedule, in some aspects, is a CRF, right? Because it's not just one dump truck, right? The town has 20 dump trucks, it has so many police cruisers, it has this many cars. So the idea that we just waited till we needed this truck, that's not what it was. The CIP said we have this many trucks, this many cars, this many vehicles. If we replace one cruiser, one dump truck, one trash truck this year, or, you know, and then the next year, we replace the next one down the road. That is really the savings to create savings for the town. That's the efficiency model that we rotate through the stock, which is what every business does that has vehicles. Could say that you lease it, you could say that you buy, but the replacement schedule happens because the bean counters have done the job to say this is what's efficient. Now, if you want to claim that the efficiency model that they use for vehicle replacement was crappy or flawed or not up to snuff, then that might be an argument, right? But it's not that the town's not trying to be efficient with the replacement of their vehicles to keep our maintenance costs down. They're trying to lower our costs as they can by replacing those vehicles after so many years of service before they need more maintenance. And we extend it out by then passing that vehicle down to the next people, which is what's saving us money, which is what's being efficient, which is taking the place of the CRF.
Brian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I just want to make a comment on the CRF. I'm torn on it. I'm not against CRFs, but didn't the library new CRF pass? So my thought is, if we, and it's a good conversation, if we did CRFs for certain capital expenditures, I think it has to do with messaging and the amount. Because if you bring forth something that is a lot of money, like 200 grand, 400,000, whatever it is, it has less chance of not passing. But if it's something you methodically start low and build upon it, I think it has a greater chance of passing, and also have a very narrow scope in regards to what it's designed to do. Like, I'm not a big fan of the school CRF because I think the guidelines or guardrails are too broad. But if you focus in and have a very attentive, like a very focused approach and what it's going to be used for, I'll be more apt to be promoting something as a CRF or capital expenditures.
Okay. I have a logistical question, Derek. I don't know if you or Danielle can answer this. You know how like Bedford has like 70 CRFs? Do they vote on each of those individually every year?
No, they have one big article, but they're also used to doing that.
And it's funded by taxation.
So it's one big article to fund all their CRFs, and it's got to be a big number, isn't it?
Few million.
Do they percentage it?
That is dangerous.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
That was my
That is
other
kind of
point.
shocking.
I
They'll be-
forgot.
Well, maybe we'll start tiny.
If I may.
We'll start little.
Go ahead and finish your point.
Is, all the boards only serve for 1 year. So you can make all your CRF plans and you can make, you know, it was like the 20-year road plan, right? Made a plan to vote in 2 million a year for the next 20 years, so our roads would be up to snuff in 20 years. And then we've
Didn't
never
happen.
funded that because every year it's at the will of the voter, or it's the will of the new select board, or it's the will of the new school board, or it's the will of the new budget committee. And this committee actually has, in my eyes, more power than any of the other committees. Because in a lot of places, the budget committee is just, right, advisory.
That's true,
Doesn't hold
but
the
the voters
power
of
of the purse
Goffstown,
strings.
the
I
voters of
I
Goffstown
understand.
voted to have a non-advisory
I'm not
budget
saying how
committee.
it got here, I'm just saying that that's,
So-
right, right.
Izzy?
So Allison, you said you were trying to figure out what I was saying.
Yeah,
So in 2023, the money for that Packer truck was in the DPW budget. But they moved it to the road plan instead of getting the Packer truck. Because that was more of a priority.
Laura?
So I think what this comes down to, Allison said it and a couple other people said it in different ways, is that we're still hugely making up for lost time. Like to Jessica's point, because you're exactly right, we should have been putting a little away. We haven't been, so now we're in the spot. So I think when we have it, we need to figure out how to work with the select board, department heads, everybody, to more aggressively make up for that time while keeping taxes as low as we can. That seems like an impossible task. It's not. It is going to mean cutting services. That's like our only option at this point. I don't see things changing this budget season that much from last. But we need to work together to figure out how to start building, even if we aren't gonna really reap benefits for, 10, 15 years, because they should have done that 10, 15, 20 years ago. I didn't live in town then, but, and they didn't. So like, let's start now, so the future of Goffstown at least looks better, even if we're a little bit having to slog through now, because the only other option is nothing, ever. Or we're gonna have to throw down the, 400,000 or these big things. We need to find a way to more aggressively plan, like real finances, not just theoretically on a spreadsheet.
Well, and with the CRF, so it would hold them to just doing that instead of coming from the unassigned and moving to a different line item, right, Is?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so like the downside of a CRF, right, is one time, like, Bartlett Elementary had one that was just for the windows, right? And once again, like, I'm gonna ruin quote this, right? But the Bartlett Elementary School had one that was like just for energy efficient windows. And then it had like $1,000 left in it. And all the windows were done. And it was like, well, we can't use this for anything else but windows. And so then we had to, it was on the warrant article to do that transfer. And, it passed, but it was kind of like some people still voted no on it because they just vote no on everything. And it's like, well, then you would have just had $1,000 sitting there for nothing. And so, like, that's the downside, is that if there is a big giant emergency where there's a whole road that gets washed out and we really do have to put a whole bunch of money in it, we can't take it from the fire department, from the fire
Well,
apparatus
isn't that
fund.
what assigned fund balance is for emergencies?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, like big.
Correct. Hold on, Allison, Peter's had his hand up for a while. So,
I just want to, I'm really not trying to push us to get out of here.
yeah, I agree.
No, hold on. I am not trying to push us to get out of here. I am totally fine doing what we're doing right now. This is the type of stuff we need to be doing this time of the year. I feel for our staff that's here, but the reality is, this is a very productive conversation, even if it sucks that it's at 8 o'clock at night. Being mindful of that, I'm very interested in what Israel's saying, though. And I don't feel like it's something we should kind of like just push past. It sounds like he's saying, in 2023, we had the money for the Packer truck set up, and we moved it to the road plan. So I have questions about that. Obviously, we can research this, but I think that is important to, if we're doing a postmortem on things, we should know, well, what have we done in the past? What kind of decisions have these boards made in the past? So, do you know if during that year, if the road plan itself was already, before they moved the money, they supposedly transferred it to the road plan, was it already funded at, what was it already funded at? Was it funded at the level that they were asking for that year?
I don't have the paperwork.
Peter, I don't want to go too far down. We can't relitigate every past budget year.
It's not about relitigating the past budget years. It's about saying, well, wait, what kind of decisions how are we making our decisions going forward?
Well, it's a bottom line budget, and they're making priorities. And for me, that is what the chief impact of this meeting with the select board is I want to see more examples of setting priorities, both long-term and short-term priorities. And I don't feel like in the last couple of years that's been done. I think, as Joe pointed out, we ended up doing it, which is not our role. So that's kind of what I'd like to see, going back to this idea of,
Kind is your role, but I think I can safely say that the road plan has never been fully funded to the level that DPW wanted it to be, except for maybe that first year in the 20 years, when we said we'll start a $2 million a year, 20-year plan. We funded it $2 million, but I don't believe we ever have since then. Well, my memory is failing as I get older, but I would go out on a limb.
so Allison, I'm going to give you the last comment, and we're going to wrap up
Okay.
this discussion. We still have a few things to get through on our agenda.
I wanted to come back to what you were saying about the unassigned fund balance, because it is not used for emergencies.
No, I know it's not, but that's what it's supposed to be.
No. No,
Okay.
it can in an extreme case.
Well,
and-
that's what you guys were telling us that it was for, but it's never been used for that.
Who was telling you that it was for that?
Just continue so we can go.
No, I just wanted to clarify that the unassigned fund balance, like, we don't, if it's being used for anything, it's because the voters have voted on it.
I get that, but
Okay.
it shouldn't be, because you should set a savings method, not unassigned, so that's specifically for what you asked for, like the Packer in 2023. If it was a CRF, instead of unassigned, it would have went to the Packer. But because it was unassigned, it could go wherever they want.
That was just within the
Well,
budget.
I think you're conflating a
Don't-
little
Yeah.
bit.
Can
He's
I-
talking about operating budget fund.
Don't
Yeah.
let me put words in
I'm not
your
talking
mouth
about
on
the
this
unassigned
one.
fund balance.
But when I,
Oh, sorry.
like, I think that our unassigned fund balance has been kind of being used as a very poor savings account.
I agree.
Because what we've been doing is it grows. Yes, the select board does elect to move money, but then we have a warrant article where we vote to move it to a proper savings account. And yes, we are allowed to do that. That's totally fine. But that's not a good way of, like, having the unassigned fund balance. And the warrant article that we had passed that we're gonna keep the unassigned fund balance at a very low level. And so, like, the unassigned fund balance, when I say emergencies that we can use the unassigned fund balance for, and Danielle, you'll correct me on this, it's gotta go through the Department of Revenue, and it's gotta be like a tornado, or like an earthquake, like something crazy.
Yeah.
And so, a Packer truck catching on fire, or a dump truck catching on fire is not emergency enough.
Doesn't insurance cover that?
Some of it, but like, that one, that's not emergency enough for moving of the unassigned fund balance. It's like a catastrophic, you know?
Okay, so that's the last comment. I let Sam have the last word.
Sorry, I'm gonna cut you off.
This is
No,
the
it's
discussion
fine.
we
I
should
just-
be having with the
there's
select
so much
board.
confusion about the unassigned
I
fund
know,
balance, is why
there
I wanted to do this,
clearly
because
is.
there's still confusion about the unassigned fund balance.
Yes, and I talk about education. I think that's one of the places that we need to start with the unreserved fund balance. But this is the discussion we need to be having with the select board. Okay, so I'm going to wrap that up. I have a list of things that we have talked about here that we will bring up at this meeting. And moving on, the impact of the default budget for the town. So we all have this press release that hopefully everybody read and saw. Derek and Danielle, do either of you want to comment on this?
It is what it is.
Right, that's pretty much summarizes it.
Okay. All right. But, I mean, I think the point is that there is an impact, and there is going to be an impact on services, that they are covering the fire department to a better level. So is this the same level the fire department would have been covered if the budget had passed? Or is this still reduced?
So the overall fire department budget is below what was proposed.
Okay, so even
But
with the
it, but it's
funds
above
switched to
default,
it.
but it's above default.
But it's above default. Okay. Okay. But the staffing, I'm trying to get a sense of, like, is it staffed at what it would have been?
Yes, but again, overtime, by law, that overtime is funded at the prior year's appropriation,
Okay.
not what you need to staff it. A default budget is not a status quo budget.
Right.
It is the prior year's appropriation minus one-time expenditures plus multi-year agreements approved by the voters at town meeting.
And not adjusted for inflation.
Not adjusted for inflation, solid waste contracts, overtime, and, yeah.
Okay. Okay. More questions? All right. Then we'll move on. Thank you, Derek. So we are supposed to appoint a CIP representative. So I've had one budget committee member contact me about their interest in doing that. Is anyone else interested in being the CIP rep?
It's so much fun, but it's a summer commitment.
Yes.
So that's something that, like, anybody who's interested should know. It takes place like every Wednesday.
Thursday.
Yeah, every Thursday during the summer, and some
Not-
Tuesdays.
Not the whole summer.
Not every summer, but
It's not, isn't it
like
every other
5 or
week?
6, yeah.
Yeah, it's like every other week and into like July.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
like
right?
August.
Okay.
It's fun.
You really sound.
It is, I
Okay.
had so much fun doing it.
If anybody else is interested, let me, say something. Nope, no takers? All right, well, so Olivia was interested in doing it again. So if nobody else is interested, then I'll go ahead and appoint Olivia to do it. Okay. Next thing is updates from school and town. You or Doug, either one of you can, instead of doing this whole, the liaison versus
Yeah,
the representative, I
Get the
just
numbers
said,
from the
let's just do
numbers
it all.
guy. Yeah, there you go.
All right, I guess the school's going first. Hello, everyone. So, we want to thank the voters. We're definitely appreciative that things passed, both our budget and the teacher contract. So the teacher contract, which is more than teachers, nurses, OT, PT, that got them to the 50th percentile of the surrounding towns, so to kind of average, which we think gives us a chance to retain our teachers because there's other positive things that are going on in Goffstown as well. So with that, though, we know it was a large increase as far as the dollar amount. So our goal going into this next year's budget is to be conservative. We want the town to be able to absorb that increase. Most of the increase was in the first 2 years. So we want the town to be able to absorb that. So what we're really going to be focusing on is kind of status quo, kind of level. We are going to continue to move forward, bump up a little bit is our hope for both computers, so IT technology. That's been a multi-year thing, which I'm hoping the Budget Committee kind of remembers. It's been kind of talked about for years, as well as some facilities work as well. But other than that, we're hopefully not making any big splashes as we come up. And that's from myself, the superintendent, kind of SAU. That is not from the school board, but that's what the budget will be presenting the school board. So we've had one board meeting since the election. We have a new chair. Jared Talbot is our chair, and Shane Razimus is our vice chair. So we welcome 2 members as well, and 1 member returned. So 2 of our members decided not to run for re-election. This Monday is our next meeting, and we're also going to have a public hearing in which from our CRF we'll be looking to get reimbursed for the completion of the cistern project at the middle school, the phone system IT course, which is at that middle school, as well as a softball field scoreboard replacement. And then we'll be asking for permission to move forward with costing out and also then for additional CRF funds for nothing new. These are things that we presented to the Budget Committee, things that kind of rely mainly on safety, and that's doors here at the high school, smoke detectors, both actually at the middle school and the high school, district firewall replacement, which is 50% or almost 50% E-rate match, which is a grant. So we pay 50%, government pays 50%, as well as the high school network switching replacement. So again, that's 50% E-rate as well. So with the 300,000 going into the CRF, we're also taking aside another 50,000 for the turf replacement, which will be years out. So that would mean that we're at a hold of 150,000 for that. Our goal is we've been actually, I think they recommend coming between like 2 and 4 times to look at the turf and make minor adjustments. We've been sticking with that 4 times per year because we think that there's going to be more bang for our buck, not having to replace the turf after 7 or 10 years, but hopefully getting more life out of it than that, so correcting any problems while they're smaller. So the turf company thinks, when I went to them and asked, when are we going to be due? Is it 10 years? They said, we can't give you that. How much is it going to cost 10 years? We can't give you that. But we can say that, what you have been doing, having us come there for 4 years, is going to extend the life of your turf. So we've been putting 50,000 aside each year, and that again is up to $150,000. In front of you, you have a I wouldn't even call it a timeline, because there's a big note right at the beginning that says that all this is last year's, and then just adjusted for the date this year. So this has not gone in front of the school board, this has not gone in front of the SAU at all, but I wanted to provide this as kind of informational purposes, especially for the new board members, to kind of give a look at what typically is used. I don't see it really changing by a lot, if any, but it has not been discussed. We'll discuss this at the school board on Monday. Again, that won't necessarily be a finalizing of this, because we want to hear input from the budget committee as well to see what their thoughts are on the dates. But we kept it the same as last year, which was that switch where we present to the school board and then we present to the budget committee. So it wasn't the joint presentations at that point. Well, we just are ending one year. Our staff are within a month or so, the principals will be talking to their department heads, and our budget for fiscal year '28 will kind of start at that point. So it starts for us over the summer, and then we move to the fall with the school board, and we continue in the fall with the budget committee before it gets presented, as we know, in March to the voters. So, I don't know if there's any input tonight from the budget committee.
So Doug, when is that SAU meeting?
SAU meeting is April 15th.
No, the one for the SAU budget. When does the SAU, because remember, that was a problem last year. It got scheduled really late, like December 18th.
Oh,
And then we
okay.
had the wrong number, and it changed, and
This says September 7th through the 11th SAU office budget review.
that's not.
That's the
same
review
thing.
of the Goffstown budget.
Yeah, but when is can you please schedule that earlier this year?
We can, I do agree that it didn't work out as best as it could have been.
Right.
So, SAU budget earlier.
Joe?
So do we get stuck with Jack all year, or is it Jared still?
It's Jack.
It's not decided.
Oh, okay. I
We
didn't know
won't,
if
we
it was
won't
official.
decide till
Thank you.
Monday.
Yeah, so the committees will
I'm cool
be
with whoever.
Yeah,
finalized on Monday.
yeah, sure, Joe. Yeah, no, we've only had the one
Okay.
meeting and we just swore in the members and stuff,
Thank
so
you.
then.
All right, so SAU budget earlier,
Earlier, definitely.
and we want to continue with the separate presentations. Did we like how that went last year, or do we want to go back?
I liked it, but what did everybody else think? I liked it because by the time we saw it, it had already been through the school board and they had already made their final decisions, and we weren't in a situation where we were presented with something that didn't actually make it through their budget and get presented to us. So, any other opinions? Everybody still awake?
Oh, yeah.
Here?
Really quickly, is there any reason that have you heard from the school board that they would want otherwise for any reason?
No, I mean, the main concern always is bringing out different staff member at night who have to go into work the next morning at 7:30, 8 o'clock for elementary, high school, things like that. But we don't, we're comfortable with that just because of how big the budget is in order for the town and both the school. There's a lot of need to get it right and be able to explain it. So that's the only kind of concern that's been mentioned about the different meetings, but that's a concern that we're comfortable with asking people to go out multiple times, just because, you know, the schools are such a big part of the community, they're such a big part of the budget, that we want to make sure that everyone gets the answers that they need. So, but other than that, there hasn't been any real concern over having it be separated.
I do like it better.
What, the joint?
As we did it last year.
Yeah, I do too, because if you remember 2 years ago when we had a joint meeting, it was a huge meeting, and we were like peppering people with questions, but I don't know if the school board members really had a chance to like get in there, and I want them to vet that budget before it comes to us, so, like really thoroughly. So I like to keep them separate, unless everybody feels differently. No. Okay. Okay, sounds good.
All right?
There you go. Thank you. Danielle?
I just lost a couple people.
Oh.
Actually, I have a quick question for Deb, if you want to
We can
hold
wrap
on.
this up.
Maybe we come back. For the turf fields you were mentioning, we're at about 150K. Again, this is just kind of money set aside, because it's not actually like earmarked in any official way, as far as I understand.
Not official at all, it's just
Okay.
being held.
But in terms of, because you have to understand, this is the part that I've kind of been critical of for a while now, like this idea that we're like, such a huge part of one CRF would be earmarked for one specific thing, but then could potentially not be spent on that. That is concerning to me and something I've kind of just been monitoring. But you mentioned that you guys are at the point where you're hearing from like manufacturers or whatever that like how you maintain it might impact that. Where is the maintenance money that we're talking about? Like what are we talking about in terms of like money year over year that you guys are?
Oh, so
spending?
far, I don't know exactly, but so far it hasn't not been a lot. I mean, it's newer turf, so we haven't really had to do much to it. So there's been
So
a
that'll
couple
ramp- you're
of
thinking
low
that'll ramp up.
spots that they've had to kind of bump up, but will that ramp up? I mean, I think it would ramp up a little bit, but again, if you keep maintaining it, then the goal is that it doesn't ramp up too much. But then eventually the turf just gets so old that you have to do something about it.
Okay, moving on to town.
Okay. So we have a few different things. As far as vacancies go, we have one in PD Communications, which is a brand new one. One in the town clerk, which is also brand new due to the election that just occurred. So we're working on filling those. We have one in fire and one in PD, both of which are pending. They've already been approved and offers made. We're just working on onboarding them as they complete the background process, so that's good. So really no major vacancies on the town side. The difficulty with that, of course, is that means everything that was budgeted for wages and benefits and things like that is being absorbed. One of the things that we looked at in the budget heavily last year was the benefits line, and there were several cuts from this committee on that line. And I had cautioned the committee that it was further than we could go, and I was concerned that it was not going to be enough. As it turns out, we ended up in a default budget, so the board is reevaluating the transfers. But luckily, that's the one line that I think is going to be helped in that the default amount leaves us against our current projection only about $70,000 of wiggle room, and that is the largest line in the town's budget. So that wiggle room, we're already expecting to be absorbed because we've been informed by several employees that they're welcoming babies this year, so they're going from a single plan to a family plan because there's marriages and babies, and that's exciting, but also costs money, and we didn't have any extra in that line. So we're watching that closely, along with all of our budget lines. We'll be watching closely, of course, because of the default budget and the transfers that are going to occur. Wanted to thank the committee for their discussion tonight. It's definitely brought some insight into information we need to be able to bring forward. Some of the things you brought up about, leasing, presenting data, CRF development, those have been discussed. So we want to make sure that we are able to bring forward that information to the committee so that you guys have current information for consideration. As far as prep for the joint meeting, one of the things I would recommend would be for everybody to look at the CIP matrix. It is posted on the website, so you can see the last, 12 years or more. It's in your binders from last year, if you have your binder from last year, just so you can take a look. One of the things that, we talk about from a planning standpoint for CIP is it depends what the item is. If it's a one-time thing that happens once every 10 years, CRF may be a great model. If it's something like the vehicle schedule, like Jack mentioned, there's over $1 million of vehicles every year for DPW. You can't put less than $1 million into a CRF and have any effect on that particular section. So we'll definitely be looking forward to discussion between this committee and the board on how to try to strategize to make up some of the lost ground that's been discussed tonight. You also have the draft schedule from the town side, just like on the school side, the budget prep. It's pretty much a mirror of what we've done last year. Immediately following one budget approval in March, we're basically jumping into the next process. So as we prep for CIP and all the different components that go into planning out a budget of this size, it's kind of a year-round process for us. So, but it gives you some ideas about when we get to, collective bargaining and public hearings and things like that. So we'll continue to work with the committee to keep you apprised of development along the way and try to get the budget over to the committee as soon as possible.
Great, thank you, Danielle. Yeah.
Do you know who's up for CBAs this year?
This year, we're going to be talking with the police department, police, patrol, and dispatch.
And for the school, it's the assistants with the CBA.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay. So we have a bunch of minutes, which we're not going to discuss tonight. Danielle went through and did a big check about what had been approved and what hadn't been approved. It turned out there was a big batch of minutes that have been on the town website for ages that we have never approved. So they're listed there. And then they're also still working on the minutes from the more current or the more recent minutes. And so those will be posted hopefully soon. So before the next meeting, we should all take a look at those minutes and then we can approve them then, maybe in one big batch. Joe, you don't want to go through and check them line by line?
I don't think I'm going to do that, but I think other members of the committee may.
Peter?
I just want to double check, will I be able, when I go on there, I'll be able to differentiate the ones that have been approved by us and the ones that have
Well,
not
there
been?
you've got all the dates listed
I'll
right
send
here.
I'll send an email with the dates. That's on the chair's copy.
Oh, only I have the dates?
Yeah, you have it.
Oh,
Transparency.
secret agenda.
Super secret.
Okay, Danielle will send out an email with the dates listed so that you guys can all tell which
Review it.
ones have not been approved yet.
The power play.
Okay. Okay, so the only, we did say we'd open this up to public comment again, although I'd want to add one more thing. Did we make a decision about giving a percentage to the select board that they are supposed to bring in? And I hate to open this up again.
No, can we talk about it at the meeting?
You want to talk about it?
Yeah.
I don't think we have a consensus of.
No, we
Okay.
definitely don't, and I.
All right.
This should be a conversation.
Okay, so
Yep.
we can put that off for that, and I have not named any future meetings. Traditionally, we take off the summer. I want to see what happens at this joint meeting, and if we feel like there's more work that we need to do, or if we can take that time off. So, is there anybody else for public comment? Our second, because our rules say we have to do it twice. You're not a member of the
Oh, I
public.
was waiting till you're done.
Well, you can close it over there.
Well, he.
Yeah, it's a private citizen.
All right, so I will close public comment. Go ahead, Joe.
I move to adjourn.
That's what I thought.
All right, all those in favor?
Wait, it was Joe and who?
Izzy.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.